This is Brass Check, and this is another in our series of all too common environmental hazards. And we're not talking about toxic waste dumps or living next to an oil refinery. We're talking about everyday stuff that nobody ever tells you about. And if you watch TV and pay attention, you'll see who owns what appears on TV. Car companies, house cleaning products, personal products, packaged food, pharmaceutical products. Do you think for 1 minute any of these companies are going to allow any of the TV shows or radio shows or websites they own? And believe me, if you are paying the bills for a media outlet, you own it. Do you think any of those companies are ever going to allow a serious treatment of some of the hazards that we've covered in previous episodes of this? The answer is no. So just because you haven't heard of it, or because you've only heard about it in a piecemeal fashion, doesn't mean it's not real. In fact, it's probably extremely real, which is why they don't want you to know. So what have we talked about so far? Well, we've talked about packaged foods. All garbage. You got to understand that. If you're in a jam and you got to eat something packaged, okay. But if you're living on it, it's not going to end well. Get a sharp knife and a cutting board. Find your way to the produce section of the supermarket and figure it out. Your life and health depend on it. Every packaged food, with very few exceptions, we're talking about less than the percentage of 1%, has got at least one thing in it that you don't want to be eating ever, let alone making a diet of it. So we've also talked about so-called personal care products like shampoos and skin lotions and shaving cream and deodorant and all this stuff, typically toxic as hell. We've also talked about laundry soap, generally toxic as hell. And all these things contribute to toxicity in the body. Some of them, like toxic laundry soap, contributes to indoor air pollution. Indoor air pollution can be 5 to 10 times greater than what appears right outside your door. So given how much time we spend indoors, and again, who's going to measure indoor air pollution? Procter & Gamble? They're going to come in and test the laundry soap that they use that's turning your house into a toxic dump? I don't think so. So anyway, today we're going to talk about another danger, and this one's a really difficult one in our car culture, but it's the new car and the new car smell. And you're probably aware of unfortunate people, usually in third world ghettos, who sniff paint and sniff glue. And why would anybody do that? Because it's cheap. It's a cheap intoxicant. And just like some people like scotch, some people like to be intoxicated by any means they can manage. And if you're a poor kid in a South American ghetto, you're not going to be buying Chivas Regal. So people do that because it intoxicates them. I don't know if you're old enough, listeners, to remember what it was like to have a mimeograph machine in your school. You have to probably be 60 or older or close to it. And what would happen if young people, let me tell you what would happen. The teacher would mimeograph something because there was no such thing as a Xerox machine back then. And she'd hand it out, and everybody would pick it up and sniff it because for some reason it, quote, smelled good. Well, it smelled good because it was a mild intoxicant. Nothing earth-shattering unless you're the person running that mimeograph machine 5 days a week, 40 hours a week. But that little hit of mimeograph chemical was a mild neurotoxin. And just like the toxins in alcohol and the toxins in cannabis and the toxins in cocaine temporarily make your brain race and feel good, that's what happened with the mimeograph ink. And that's what happens with kids that sniff glue. Now, some of these things are more damaging than others. sniff and glue, obviously a horrifically damaging thing to do. Booze, a smaller, a slower form of poisoning, but a very steady and reliable one, and for some people a catastrophic one. So let's take it. Let's fast forward or whatever we do to get to the new car smell. Oh, you love that new car smell. What is it you love about it? You're loving it because it's a neurotoxin, and it's lighting up your brain, and therefore it smells good. Let's talk about the neurotoxins in a new car. Volatile organic compounds. That includes things like adhesives and glue, fabrics, plastics, and all the things that are used to hold everything together. And what you're smelling is the off-gassing of those toxic substances. And they include things like ethylbenzene, formaldehyde, toluene, the same kind of thing you'll find in nail polish and remover and paint. And what are the side effects? Headaches, dizziness, difficulty thinking clearly, allergic reactions, your eyes watering up, reddening, watering up, nausea, prolonged exposure to volatile organic chemicals can even result in cancer. What else is in these brand new cars? Chlorine, lead, and we've got more side effects if inhaled. Now, we often think of poisons as things that we eat or eat inadvertently. You can inhale a poison. In fact, an inhaled poison more dangerous than a edible poison in general, all other things being equal. Why? Because you've got hydrochloric acid in your stomach. You've got a system that's designed to grab bad things and eliminate them. Your lungs don't work that way. Your lungs don't expect toxins to be coming in, ever. They're not designed to fight them. So there's no stomach mediating them. There's no elimination system. Those toxins go straight into your lungs, straight into your blood, and straight to the organs, including your liver, your kidneys, and your brain. So inhaled toxins are very serious. And some of the things that in a car that come in new cars can lead to birth defects, learning disabilities, and again, cancer. Now, of course, corporate-sponsored science says the science is not entirely clear on whether or not these materials could pose a threat. Okay. There are probably people listening to this who know that they don't do well in a new car. Or maybe they're not aware. They know that there's something not right, and they can't put their finger on it. Well, it could be, unfortunately, the new car. How about when you put a pack of kids in the back seat of a car and they go ape shit? Now, is that just normal childhood behavior? No, there's an element to that. Or is it that they're reacting to the toxic environment that they're in? Their brains are reacting to the toxic environment they're in. Think about it. So what can we do? It's tough. It's tough. I always say the greenest car is the car you're driving right now. Why? Because you don't have to go out and get the steel and the rare metals and the other metals and the glues and the plastics and the adhesives and the fabrics and all that to make the car. The car already exists. You want to save the planet? Learn how to keep your car going. Buy a car that can be maintained in excess of 50, 100, 150, 200, 250,000, 300. These cars exist. And you got to hunt for a mechanic who gives a damn, who won't rip you off. But they exist too. You got to really do your homework, but they exist. So you could save a ton of money, save the environment, and save your health by not being one of these people that continuously, sells a car as soon as it gets its first ding and buys a new car right away. That's that. So what can you do? Keep the interior well ventilated, especially during the first few months of ownership. In fact, if you're going to buy a new car, you might time it to buy it in a season where you can keep the windows open and not depend on air conditioning or heat. So that might be early spring. That gives you all of spring, summer, fall. That's a whole bunch of months. Keep those windows down. Park the car in the shade if you can. Not so easy necessarily, but if something you can do. Keep the car clean. Reduce dust. Because what happens, the VOCs get into the air, they attach to the dust picks up the VOCs like a sponge, and then releases them continuously. So that will help. But the reality is it takes a long time to gas off a car. Like years. And the first several months are really, really tough. So if you're not feeling well, or if somebody close to you is not feeling well, or if your children are out of their minds when they're put in a car, that could be the reason why. So that is the news from Brass Check, and it's a good thing to live somewhere where you can walk a lot, walk to the store, walk to where you need to go. I mean, it's pretty rare these days, but it's if you're in the position to be moving, that is something to put very high on your want list. Can I go and get, a loaf, the proverbial loaf of bread and quart of milk, without having to get into a car? And a lot of people commute to work, and could be explaining some of the road rage symptoms we see out there. Could be explaining some car wrecks that we see out there. Cars are a tough environment. So at least it's not you. You're not crazy, and you're not a wimp. You're dealing with something pretty formidable that nobody ever bothered to warn you about. And of course, you can go on the internet and confirm everything I said.